Hi, this is Cal from Raw Pictures. So, I promised I would do a video talking about the various effect shots in Terminal. I wanted to share some of the knowledge and maybe some of the techniques that are used to create these shots. This was an ambitious film from the word go, and a lot of the shots which we've ended up with in the final film, I didn't exactly know how I was going to do. I sort of half knew how I was going to do it. So what you see before you is mostly half planned, and then the rest of it worked out in post. The first thing I'm going to say to you, if you're looking at creating a film that is quite VFX heavy, is plan it completely. Don't leave anything to chance. Make sure you, for the best looking shots possible, make sure you know exactly what needs to go on the screen, because it's that pre-planning which actually helps make the shot, or at least makes that workflow a hell of a lot easier. Because one thing I did find with this was that because I hadn't entirely planned how I was going to do everything, it meant that I had to spend a hell of a lot of time in post-production working out how to achieve it. So that would be my first piece of advice to anyone wanting to make a film that uses these techniques: is plan, plan, plan. So, some of the effects shots you see are done against a green screen, others aren't. Some are done as a sky replacement, some are all in camera with some VFX added. One or two shots are made up with a bit of digital matte painting. But for today's video, I'm going to focus on this shot here on the balcony. So if we look at this shot, this is effectively made up of a dozen or so components overall. We've got the foreground actors, which were shot against a portable green screen outdoors. That was to help out with our lighting, of which we had very little, but that made the most sense to make use of the natural light outdoors. Second, we have a plate of the actual balcony ledge, which was real and has their food on the side there. And then we have the background itself, which is a very large animated digital matte painting that features things like windmills, moving clouds, and things like that. And then everything is essentially pulled together from that point. Okay, so here's a scene in After Effects as it would appear. We can obviously see that it's broken down into the various different components there on the timeline. We've got the background plate, the middle ground plate, the foreground plate, and then the adjustments layer on the top, which is actually the grade for that particular shot. We've got this lot of garbage at the bottom here, which is actually part of the green screen itself, but because the ratio of the film is different in Premiere, there wasn't any point in worrying about it because it wouldn't be seen. So first let's look at the foreground shot of the actors. We'll turn everything off, and here we can see they are literally stood right in front, or pretty much right next to a portable green screen with our assistants holding it. So if we turn this back on, so we've got just a garbage mask around it, which is probably way wider than it needs to be. The reason being is because when I've been compiling these shots, which are all the same, I could have, I suppose, dragged them in like this, but I couldn't be sure that if I was just going to copy and paste the mask to all the same shots, that they wouldn't be sort of flapping their arms around. And just to save me work, may as well just keep it nice and wide. Also, I'm lazy, and that's how that essentially works. But you can, and you should probably, really as a good practice, keep it quite sort of narrow in and close to the subject as possible, because essentially that saves processing power when it comes to doing the key later. So the next component is the background, which is the matte painting, so we're using this particular portion of the massive digital matte painting, which is stuck in its own pre-composed layer, which features things like the windmills, the cloud layer, the posters, and there's like a little smog layer that's very faintly sort of moving. Now, most people won't notice things like this, but if you put them in, just all adds flavour to the scene. So don't be afraid of adding in too much. Just be aware that obviously the more you add, the more processing power you will need. But go ahead and add. And the next, we've got this the middle layer now, which is the actual balcony they were stood behind. So that balcony exists behind the screen as they were performing this, and then we immediately started rolling again, moved the screen out the way, and did a 10-15 second plate shot of this So there, if we turn the mask off, we can see the actual background as it appeared originally. So we wanted to maintain the ledge there with the food, but we wanted to get rid of the background itself and replace it with the futuristic vista. So all we needed to do in this shot, or in this plate rather, was to put it in a mask to create that layer. The main reason to shoot this shot this way was that it kept the light consistent, because you're shooting both the actors and the middle plate in the same lighting conditions, which makes it match up a hell of a lot easier. So you've only got to match up the background to their lighting, which is essentially what we've done here. So if we turn key light on, we can see that we're eliminating the green. Again, we're not getting rid of the garbage at the bottom of the screen there, because we aren't going to see it due to the ratio. We've got the advanced spill suppressor, which just gets rid of any green edge created by the green screen, because again, you'll also be surprised at how easily human skin bounces things like the green screen, so that's definitely worth using a lot of the time, at least anyway. And then we've got the refine hard matte, which is then to soften out and better blend things like hair elements and things like this. So then when we play it and its hair's flapping around, it's not perfect as a still, but because the hair's moving around so much, there's actually a little bit of a blur that occurs because of the frame rate, so that actually helps sell the key a little bit better. But one thing to note with key light is that none of in fact, any of these effects, if we look at the matte itself, none of these will just work instantly out of the box. You've got to then refine each of these to suit the shot. You need to spend time messing around with the gain, the balance, or which particular color you're selecting. And one interesting as well is pay attention to the intermediate result view, not necessarily the final result view. And I'll tell you why. It's because the final result view can sometimes take away more detail. Like, see, if we look at the hair on this left-hand side character, with the intermediate review, the hair looks like this. The final result, we're actually losing detail. So the key's fine in the intermediate result, but we're losing detail if we go to the final result. So in instances like this, to preserve as much detail as possible, leave it at the intermediate result and then apply something like a refine hard matte. And that way it maintains a lot more of the detail, which is what we want in the shot to help sell the shot in the end anyway. That's just something I picked up during the course of learning how to do the effects for the film. And then lastly, we'll turn on the adjustment layer, which is the color correction and the coloring for it. Now, you don't necessarily need to do this correction in After Effects. I chose to do the coloring in After Effects rather than, say, Lumetri in Premiere or in any other software at the time, just purely because I found the workflow easier to do it in After Effects shot by shot, and I could just literally cut and paste the adjustment layer once I'd figured out what I wanted the color and everything to look like from shot to shot, provided they were all the same scene or all the same shot in this instance. So then by comparison, if we look at one of the later shots, the process is exactly the same. We've got the actor in front of the green screen, then we start applying the middle layer, add that to the background layer. In this case, we're going to add a bit of Gaussian blur to create some depth of field, add key light and the matte refinements for the hair and things, and then that final layer in this instance where we used After Effects to create the color correction and the overall grade. And that technique is applied to probably 30-40% of the film. So initially, if you take each shot, and provided that you've got a lot of that same angle, your workflow turns into, well, let's do all that angle, that particular shot first. And once you've worked out the first one, you can almost literally copy and paste all of the effects, masks, everything from that initial worked out shot into the rest, therefore speeding up your workflow immensely. The only thing you'll then have to do later on is if something unique happens in that particular shot that you're working on, that you might have to just then play around with the refinements, play around with various settings just to make sure that it accounts for what's going on. But the process in itself is pretty quick. So that's everything for the green screen shots for the moment. If you want me to go into more detail with a step-by-step process, then leave a comment below and we'll maybe look at doing a tutorial, an actual tutorial video later on, including some of these other shots where we've got some sky replacement or we've got the matte painting process going on there as well. And if you're interested, I can also do a tutorial about how to create a digital matte painting for a background scene. So again, if these are things that sound interesting to you, leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed the insight in this video, please subscribe and give a thumbs up and hit that bell notification because, as everyone says, it really helps the channel. So really hope you enjoyed this video, everyone. Thanks for watching, and I will speak to you in the next one.